This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast. The GSMC Sports Podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kayvon, and happy Draft Night Eve, ladies and gentlemen. We are officially less than 24 hours away. Actually, it's 8:41. I think the first draft, the number one overall pick will be called at 8:25, if I remember correctly. So we're less than 24 hours away. I mean, we are almost there, ladies and gentlemen, until it's going to be one of the best drafts that I can really remember in a long, long time. And the crazy part about this is there's still so much uncertainty. What is going to happen at number 3? What's going to happen at number 4? Could the Falcons trade out? Are the Bengals really going to take Jamar Chase, or are they going to go with the offensive tackle? Are the Lions trying to trade up? Are they trying to trade down? Will the Patriots make a deal with the Panthers? There are so many. Will Chicago do anything? Will Washington do anything? Do the Giants get another wide receiver? What does Dallas do? I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I can't wait to discuss it all with you guys here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Once again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kayvon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this lovely day. And let's have some fun here. So we're going to obviously talk all things draft right now. There's just too much going on to not talk about the draft. We will bring up some other sports like the NBA, talk some playoffs if we have time. But since it is the Draft Night Eve, forgive us for spending this show on the NFL Draft. And I just want to start with this, all right, because we're going to get into a couple of topics. The first one, which we'll get into next segment, is, there's no team out there. There's one team out there that has more pressure than any other team. More pressure than any other team out there. Doesn't matter. I mean, I will tell you guys this team and when we get to it, and I don't think anybody would stop and say, wait a second, Kayvon, there's definitely another team out. I think everyone would sit there and say, yeah, you're right. That team does have the most pressure. And I will tell you guys who that team is in just a little bit. I think most of you can already guess who that is. And then we will also get into Justin Fields. A lot is happening with him. Is he really going to fall on draft night? Are these teams really going to let that happen? A guy like Justin Fields, could it be where he falls down out of the top 10? And then we'll also give you our final picks. We're going to give you our final picks of the first round, some of the big moves that we think are going to happen, some of the exciting moves, some outlier picks, some picks to watch. We'll go through all of it, but I want to start with this. And it's just the sheer notion of the NFL Draft. What is the NFL Draft? Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL Draft is a sporting event. See, there's so many people get up in arms about how everyone is covering this NFL Draft. It's like, I hear these people all the time, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on TV, whether it's on Twitter. Why in the hell are we spending this much time on a draft? Why is there so much speculation? I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. It's just a freaking draft. There's this, you see all these people getting we talk about it ad nauseum, and it's really just bothering me. And what people don't really understand is, guys, this is a sporting event. This is a sporting event. It is the biggest sporting event that doesn't actually involve scoring a touchdown, or hitting a three-pointer, or hitting a home run, or throwing a strikeout, or leading a final 2-minute drive, right? Or trying to lead a comeback in the fourth quarter. This is a sporting event without the actual physical sport, but it's a sporting event. And it's become so big that it has to be covered this way. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why it has become this big. Things don't just blow up for no reason. The NFL doesn't turn the NFL draft into a spectacle for no reason, because that's what it is. A spectacle, a sporting event. They do it because people are intrigued. Why are people intrigued? That is the interesting question. And it's very simple. It's one simple word. Hope. Hope. Ladies and gentlemen, the draft has become what the NFL draft is because of hope. Because it gives you and I and everyone else out there a chance to grab onto some type of hope that our team can turn the corner. That our team can draft player X or player Y, and we're going to be great by next year. Or we're building to being a good team. It is the one sporting event that gives you hope in the real and now, but you actually won't see if that hope pays off until the future. You get what I'm saying? Like, everybody that is tired of their job. Okay, so when you get tired of your job, you get in a lull, right? You get in this part of your life where it's almost like you're in slow motion. You feel like every day is so long. You feel like every single day just drags out. You feel like the time stops because you don't enjoy what you're doing, right? So time moves slow. You're not enjoying life, so we always talk about it, right? When you're having the best time, when you go out on a trip with your friends, it's always like, damn, did the trip really already end? You go visit your friend for the weekend, it's like, damn, did it really already end? When you're having a good time, time flies. But when you're nervous, or when something's on your mind, or when you're bored, that's when time goes the slowest, right? So when you're tired of your job, you sit around and you're just moping and you're tired of it. And so what do? You go out and look for better jobs. You go out and look for something else, right? And as you start to look for jobs, as you start to apply for jobs, as you start to hear back from jobs, you start to have interviews, you start to perk up, right? You start to get excited. You start to think that, oh my goodness, this is actually a possibility. I might actually get to do something else. I might actually get to have another job. Even though you're still working for that same boring job and you're still doing the same thing every day, the only thing that's changed, though, is you now have hope, because you don't even know if you're going to get the job, but you're starting to hear from things. You're starting to see that there's other opportunities out there. That's what the NFL draft is. We have no damn clue if any of these picks are going to actually work out. They all might suck. And this is why the NFL... I can promise you this. There are 5 quarterbacks going in this draft. I can bet everything on my life, in my bank account, whatever. All 5 quarterbacks will not be good. They won't be. Honestly, if you look at the statistics, 2 of those 5 will probably be good quarterbacks. The rest will probably suck. That's just how it is in the NFL. If it was easy, then every team would be good. But it's not. It's a very hard process. It's an inexact science. We've had GMs and scouts and coaches do this for years on end, and no one's been able to perfect the NFL draft. But it brings hope. Okay? So while you don't know if you're going to get that job, you have no idea if you're going to get that job, but you know what you do. You know what you know? You do know that you have a chance now. Instead of just sitting around all day and felt like the world was going to end, now you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now you see that you might actually get to that light. That's what it is with the NFL draft. If the Atlanta Falcons pick number 4 and they take Kyle Pitts, I'm going to have hope that my offense could be the best offense or one of the best offense in the entire NFL. Because you have Kyle Pitts, because you have Julio Jones, because you have Calvin Ridley, because you have Matt Ryan, and because you have Arthur Smith controlling it all. But I don't know if that's the case. It might not work out that way at all. Arthur Smith might not be a good head coach. Kyle Pitts might not work in the NFL. The Jaguars have been the most pathetic franchise in the NFL. Them and the Jets. And they are now getting Trevor Lawrence, and it's like that franchise is they're buying toasters. They're buying electric toasters for the quarterback, for goodness sakes. Right? I mean, they're going out there and they're putting in their own hard-earned money to buy a rich quarterback a toaster for a wedding gift. Because they're that happy. They're that happy that they finally have that light at the end of the tunnel. They finally have that guy that is going to turn their franchise around. They think. In all likelihood, Trevor Lawrence will hit, and in all likelihood, Kyle Pitts will hit as well. Those are guys that you look at and you just say, okay, they're different. But you never know. It's the NFL. And you never know what's going to happen with all of these picks. But what you do know is you have hope and you have a place to start. And that's why this draft has become such a massive deal. And I wanted to start the show on this because there's just so much talk and there, you know, it's fun, but I also see a lot of negative about how the draft is it's talked about too much and it's just going over and over these predictions where no one really knows what's going to actually happen, and it's just a chance to go back and call out who's right and who's wrong. Look, yes, you could do all of that stuff. But what you also can do is understand it for what it is. Things don't blow up for no reason. The NFL doesn't keep going back to London every year for games just because they want to make teams fly to London. No, they go to London every year because the stadiums sell out, and football, American football in London is popular when they show up. Right? The NFL doesn't keep putting games on Monday Night Football every year just for the hell of it. No, they do it because people love coming home from work on Monday knowing they still have one more football game left before the week is over. And they don't get the draft bigger and bigger every single year for no reason and spend money for no reason. They do it because every single year the draft itself gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's all about hope, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about projecting hope and giving off this type of vibe where one player or two players can completely change your franchise around. And it's not a lie. We've seen it happen. The Indianapolis Colts get Peyton Manning. The franchise has changed, right? And it's not always just the first and second and third and fourth and fifth pick. Patriots get Tom Brady. The franchise has changed. So with what you do with your picks, look, you're not going to hit on everyone. And you're not going to miss everyone. But the whole point is, it's hope. At the end of the day, we have no idea how good these players are going to be and what's going to happen. And to be honest with you, majority of it is all about fit anyways. it's all about fit other than a couple of different players. And you say, Kayvon, what do you mean by that? Well, it's all about where they land up. Look, there's going to be players out there like Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts who are so good that they will fit in everywhere. But then there's going to be players like Trey Lance and Justin Fields and Mac Jones where they're only going to work if they land in the right spot. Mac Jones is not going to be a Pro Bowl 20-year veteran if he ends up in Detroit. And that's no disrespect to Detroit, and it's no disrespect to Mac Jones, but that's just the hard-earned truth. But if Mac Jones ends up with the San Francisco 49ers in a head coach in Kyle Shanahan, who is maybe the best offensive coach in the league right now, I would put my money on it if I had to, he's going to be a lot more successful there and have a lot higher chance of being a successful Pro Bowl quarterback than he is at Detroit. It's all about fit for 99.9% of these prospects. There's those 1.1%ers like Trevor Lawrence, like Peyton Manning, like Kyle Pitts, like Julio Jones, like Calvin Johnson, who it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, doesn't matter who your coach is, I'm going to be good. But the rest of them, it's about fit. Trey Lance might have some of the best skill. Trey Lance's skill set, honest to truth, might be better than Trevor Lawrence. It really might be. But the difference is Trey Lance is not ready to thrive in the NFL. And if Trey Lance goes to a situation where they want to make him thrive and play right away, his whole entire career could be completely ruined. But if he goes to a place, say Atlanta takes him at 4, where he can sit and learn from Matt Ryan and learn from an offensive mind like Arthur Smith, he could be the best quarterback in this draft, even ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Or if he goes to a place like San Francisco and has Kyle Shanahan leading him the way, he could be the best quarterback in this draft. But if he falls to a place, say Detroit took him at 7, and they have Goff, they probably won't, or say Chicago, say he falls all the way down to Chicago, or Chicago trades up for him, he's going to have a much harder time to be successful there, where they force him in right away. Maybe they don't teach him as well. They don't develop him. They don't help him along in the process as much. They don't have the talent around him. It's going to be much harder. Fit is a very big part of how all this works, and hope is what drives the NFL draft, ladies and gentlemen. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, there is one team in the draft that's picking tomorrow night that has more pressure on them than any other team, and it's not even close, ladies and gentlemen. Can you guess who that team is? We'll talk about it right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you for joining us today as we are now on the eve of the draft, less than 24 hours away until the Jacksonville Jaguars have their new quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And then the New York Jets have their new quarterback in Zach Wilson. And I told you guys as we rounded up segment number 1 that there's one team out there that has more pressure on them than any other team in the entire draft. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the New York Jets. Now, I think most of you could have guessed that. I think most of you predicted that. It's pretty easy if you think about the teams. They're on the longest playoff drought in the NFL right now. 10 years they haven't made the playoffs. They've been through countless executives, countless coaches. They've missed on first-round picks, second-round picks, third-round picks. They have the butt fumble going on. I mean, they've been an absolute disaster. The New York Jets are under the most fire in this NFL draft, and I'm going to explain to you guys exactly why that is, and I'm going to give you guys some second place and third places of who else is under pressure in this year's draft, but no one stands close to the pressure that is surrounding the New York Jets organization right now. And I'll explain exactly why that is in just a minute in this segment number 2 here. But I wanted to just start off real quick by, and I was saying that the draft is all about hope, right? That's what the draft is about. It's all about, for the fan base, it's all about hope. It's all about getting a player, an image that is going to put some type of excitement. You're going to buy jerseys, you're going to hang up, flags, and you're going to buy merchandise, and it's something to get you excited before the new year starts. And then as you go into the new year, as you go into the new season, you're excited because you have that guy. Jags fans are excited because they have Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer. Who the hell knows how good they're going to do? They might not really win football games for 3 years. But they've got Trevor Lawrence, and that's what they can hang their hat on, right? They can say, hey, we've got Trevor Lawrence. It's all about hope. It's all about the theory of the mind and putting hope into your brains, and it works. I'm ecstatic that my Atlanta Falcons might have the best tight end prospect in NFL history. Mel Kiper Jr.'s words, ladies and gentlemen, he said that this is the best tight end he has ever studied, he has ever scouted. Of course I'm happy. I have dreams. I have very happy dreams. And yes, that sounded really nasty, but I did not mean it that way. Get your head out of the gutter, all you sick pervs out there. I have excited dreams. That doesn't really sound any better. Whatever. I have really pumped up dreams about Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley playing on the outside with Kyle Pitts running down the middle and Matt Ryan slinging the football like the Hall of Famer he is. That pumps me up. That gives me hope. We might go 6-10 again and completely suck. But I don't know that for a year from now. And all I know right now is I have a Kyle Pitts jersey on the way if they draft him at number 4 overall. And I get to get in my text and brag to all my friends that we have the greatest tight end prospect in NFL history. What do you have, huh? What you got over there, Washington? What you got, New England? You still rolling with Cam Newton? Yeah, well, we got Kyle Pitts, bruh. We got Kyle Pitts. That's how it works. That's what the draft is about, baby. It's about hope. It's about bringing excitement and joy to those out there that need it. It is the biggest sporting event that doesn't involve throwing a touchdown or hitting a home run or shooting a 3, but it's a sporting event. Don't think 1 second that it's not. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. All right. Let's move into this, and when we start segment 3, I want to talk about Justin Fields, who is just one of the most, polarizing QB figures that I can't remember for the longest time. He is falling, and I don't understand why. It makes no sense to me, and we're going to get into that, but there is nobody, and you guys reach out to me on Twitter, at Kayvon _ sports, or the company page at GSMC_sports. Reach out to me there. Tell me if you could honestly argue with me on this. You won't be able to. But let me know. There is nobody that can convince me that the New York Jets, that can convince me that a team has more pressure on them than the New York Jets have. Now, again, there's some close seconds, and I'll incorporate them. I'll bring them in here in a little bit. But if you look and see, the Jets have a couple of different things here. Number one, they're battling this gory past and history that is just wrapped all over them like a ghost, like an evil ghost, right? If you think about it, just what they've been through. That's number one. So you make the decision, the Jets made the decision to move away from a young player in Sam Darnold, who I liked, and the Jets liked too. They admitted it. They liked Sam Darnold. And a lot of guys out there in the media that I really respect liked him as well. So they moved off from a very young player who never performed up to what they thought when they drafted him, but was still so young and still so raw and never really got a fair deal in New York. So they moved on from him, right? So you got that. All right, they traded him. They didn't really get much for him. So not only did they make that tough decision to trade him, but now they're drafting an even younger player that has a huge ceiling, but also a lot of bust factors and questions in Zach Wilson, who, for the record, I also like. But I don't like him over Fields or Lawrence. They can't get Lawrence, but they could take Fields. And I think that they're a little rushing themselves to take Wilson so quick over Fields, but that's neither here nor there. They like Wilson, they should take Wilson. And I think Wilson's going to be good. So, but when we talk about pressure, right, what is pressure? How do you define pressure, right? It's that heavy feeling. We've all felt it. It's that heavy feeling that just hangs on you as you get ready to do something, right? I mean, you feel it in your stomach, you feel it on your back, you feel it in your body, you feel the pressure. You can physically feel it and you can mentally feel it. It can get thicker as the pressure, it tightens. We know what pressure is. So think about it. Let me give you some more reasons, all right? Few reasons why the Jets have the most pressure leading into tomorrow night. They have the longest active playoff drought in the NFL. Who has it? The Jets. 10 years. So the Jets have not made the playoffs in 10 years. They've had 3 GMs in the last 7 years. 3 GMs in the last 7 years. And for the record, the GM that they have now in Joe Douglas, I do really like, and I think he's going to be very successful. But he has made a big move in the Sam Darnold, so we have to see how that plays out. But I do like him. I love some of the things he's already done. I love the Jamal Adams trade. I love the Mekhi Becton trade and the the Jamal Adams trade. I love the Mekhi Becton pick last year, the Denzel Mims pick in the second round. He has done a lot of stuff that I really like. But while they're very big moves, I don't want to put any type of, I don't want to kind of put those picks down or anything because those picks have a lot of weight. But when you're picking a quarterback at number 2 and you're trading a quarterback away in Sam Darnold, those picks are going to have much more weight and those picks are going to have much more, that's going to be the talking point of Joe Douglas's career. Just like whatever the 49ers do at 3, that's going to define their career in San Francisco. This is going to define Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas could hit on every single draft pick from here on out. If he gets this quarterback wrong and if Sam Darnold becomes a star, that's what's going to be he's going to be known for, if that makes sense. But right now, I love what he's been doing. So outside of the last 2 years, where they got Quinnen Williams, the big boy out of Alabama, and then they got Mekhi Becton, They don't have a single first-round pick on their roster. I mean, they have been absolutely horrendous when it comes to getting the draft right. So again, different regimes back then, but still, same franchise. So when you look at the draft board, right, and you look at the teams, and you could get deeper into the weeds and start going into the mid-teams like Chicago and all that, we get that. But for the purposes of this conversation, the most pressure of the draft, so the Jaguars, they have the first overall pick, they have Trevor Lawrence, everybody and their mother thinks they should take Trevor Lawrence. They went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, or they went to the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. They're going to be fine. It's going to take some time, and eventually they're going to have to win, but their pressure isn't mounting yet. The Jets, number 2, I already said they have the most pressure, so let's put them aside for a second. The Niners now, okay? There is definitely a big pressure for the Niners to get this right, okay? As I said, they are going to be defined by this because of what they gave up to get to number 3. They gave up 3 first-round picks to get to number 3. A team has not given up 3 first-round picks since Washington did for RG3. We all know how that went. So that is a big, big deal, right? Now, they still don't have the pressure, though, that the Jets have because they did just make a Super Bowl 2 years ago. They didn't win it, but they did just make it, okay? So while, yes, they are gonna, if they completely whiff on this pick, they will be in a lot of trouble, but they have more leeway because they did make a Super Bowl a couple years ago. A lot of people have faith in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, so there will be a lot of pressure, but nothing like the Jets as of yet. And now, they had their reports of they might take either Lance or Mac Jones, right? So they're not looking at Fields. If Fields become a superstar and Mac Jones or Lance doesn't, there's a lot of things that can go into that. So the Niners aggressively, they jump up to get the quarterback spot. You got to get that right. If you don't, that could be an issue. But again, they were just in the Super Bowl. The Falcons are picking at 4. They could trade out. I would still roll with Matt Ryan. I've already told you guys that. I think he can play still for a couple years. The Falcons, you could say, have pressure on them for sure, but they've also done things that have made their fan base very excited. The last couple years have been tough, but they still did make a Super Bowl where they should have won it. They still had Matt Ryan since 2008, who's made 2 NFC championship games. He's won an MVP. He's broken a bunch of records. They've had Julio Jones there putting on a show for the last 10 years. Like, they have still had some big moments for their fan base, right? They whooped up on Rodgers and the Packers in the NFC Championship game the year they went to the Super Bowl. They were up 17-3 on Kaepernick and the 49ers in the 2012 NFC Championship game. So before they blew that lead, but they had a lot of moments where it's like they're gonna be under pressure eventually if they don't start to pick it up with this new regime. But they just hired a new coach and a new GM. It's gonna take some time there. So when you look at all these picks, and then, you got the Bengals at 5. They have Joe Burrow. Got to give him time. The Dolphins, they're on the up and up. They've done a great job recently with their new regime. The Lions are in complete rebuild, so they have a lot of time. There's no pressure there yet. Who's that? Panthers. The Panthers just traded for Sam Darnold. They're still young there. You got 9, the Broncos. 10, the Cowboys will always have pressure. Then you get to the 11th pick, the New York Giants, the second New York team. To me, that is the second closest team in terms of pressure. I think the Giants, they don't have as much pressure on them as the Jets do. But they're up there. And this is why. Dave Gettleman has been there for a couple years now. He had his whole moment of where he picked Daniel Jones higher than where everyone thought he should have gone. Daniel Jones has shown very good flashes, but he's also shown very bad flashes. Then Dave Gettleman takes Andrew Thomas, the tackle, number 4 overall, where there was a lot of other players out there, that, especially in the offensive line in that draft, that have looked better already than Thomas has. It's still early. It was only 1 year. He took Saquon, who's been good, but he's gotten hurt. The Giants, are in a very pressured year this year because they go out and sign Kenny Golladay. They go out and bring in the speedster John Ross. They start to build up their offensive line better. Saquon comes back. Daniel Jones is now going in his third year. Their defense was really good last year. They are now in a situation where they've got to win some football games this year. I'm not saying they have to make the playoffs. I'm not saying they have to win a playoff game. They have to be competitive in the NFC East from start to finish. That's what they have to do. They have to be fighting for the NFC East crown or a playoff spot from start to finish, and Daniel Jones has to look good. If Daniel Jones does not show any signs of improvement, then Dave Gettleman will be without a job entering next year's draft. And Daniel Jones very well might be as well. Everything is riding on for Dave Gettleman, how Daniel Jones plays and what he's done with the moves that he's made, the offense that he's brought in. You still have Evan Ingram there. You still have Darius Slayton. There is a lot of Sterling Shepard. There is a lot of talent on that Giants offense, and then there's a very good defense there. They are going to be, it's win time. It's win time. So when you stack up the two New York teams, I think those are the two teams with the most pressure heading into the draft. I really do, when you're looking at the teams picking up in the top like that. But no team has as much pressure on them as the New York Jets. The decision that they made to trade away Sam Darnold ramps up the pressure by 10 times. Because if Sam Darnold goes and has a great career in Carolina, and Zach Wilson is a bust, or Zach Wilson is just okay, it's a fail. It's a fail. It's that simple. Because they traded Darnold, Zach Wilson has to be better than Darnold. It's not just being good. It's now measured of you have to be better than what Darnold does in Carolina. And while a lot of people are sitting there at home right now saying, well, that's easy. Darnold hasn't done crap since, he doesn't look good. Understand, Darnold never had a good squad or a good coach. He is now going to a very good head coach in Matt Rule and a very good offensive coordinator in Joe Brady. He has not had that type of offensive coach. He's going to have Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the league, next to him. He's going to have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. He is going to have a lot of weapons to work with and a really good head coach to drive all of the pieces together. Sam Darnold is set up to be successful now. He was not set up to be successful in New York. He is now set up to be successful. Will he? Who knows? That's what we'll have to wait and see. But the Jets pick at number 2, which we all believe is going to be Zach Wilson. It's not just comparing how good he is. It's comparing how much better he is to Sam Darnold. Because they made the choice to get rid of him and pick Wilson instead of run it back with Darnold. And so that's going to be where all the pressure lies, other than just making sure Zach Wilson's good in the first place. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this show right before the NFL Draft tomorrow night. I cannot wait to get started. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, much more talk on the NFL Draft. Justin Fields, could he really fall outside the top 10? Could that really happen? We'll discuss it next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we're now honored and delighted to have on Will McFadden. Will McFadden was a writer for the Atlanta Falcons, did a really good job, writer-reporter for them. He now does some work for the Falcoholic. You can find him on Twitter at Will McFadden. Go check that out. He's got a lot of great content I would highly suggest. And Will, let's dive right into it, man. Obviously, the draft is on Thursday. It's finally here, and it's really one of the most unique drafts, in my opinion, because we know what's going to happen with 1 and 2. We get that. And then everything goes from there, and it's going to be chaos. When San Francisco traded up, and we're going to get into a lot of Falcons talk here, but just to start at number 3, when San Francisco traded up to number 3, you knowing Kyle Shanahan, knowing the system, knowing what he did with Matt Ryan, when they did that, before any of the talk about Mac Jones, did you have any idea that it could be for Mac Jones, or what was your thought when you first heard that news?
My first thought was that it was definitely for a quarterback. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think you make a move like that, especially in a draft this year that is so top heavy at quarterback. And it's really unusual in that regard. So I definitely thought quarterback. Then when all of these stuff started coming out about the Mac Jones, it kind of led me to maybe connect some dots that in hindsight that I may not have connected kind of initially. Mm-hmm. I still hold out reservation that this isn't a smokescreen, because it's really rare for a team, you know, to be just like, if they're not 1 or 2, you know, to just be dialed in to one guy throughout this whole process. But this is where it's kind of another weird year in the sense that we do know who 1 and 2 are. So it's kind of like San Francisco has the number 1 pick here. But I think San Francisco likes at least 2 of the quarterbacks who are expected to be there. So they could like Fields and Jones. But we talk a lot about with the draft, like a player's physical traits, much more than kind of their intangibles. And I think that coaches really, and Kyle in particular, they care a lot about the intangibles. They do care about how quickly can you pick up a playbook? What is your demeanor in the huddle? You know, how do you conduct a practice? What do you do in the offseason? Things like that. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's Mac Jones, but there's still maybe 15% of me that wouldn't be fooled if it's a smokescreen.
Yeah, and I kind of look at it the same way. I was with you when they made the trade up. I thought, okay, it's definitely a quarterback. And then the whole thing about they wanted to keep Jimmy G, and it's almost kind of like where the Falcons are at now. Now, Matt Ryan is still a much better quarterback than Jimmy G, and more importantly, a much more durable quarterback than Jimmy G, which is one of the issues that San Francisco has with Jimmy G. So when you look at the Falcons at number 4, if it is a chance that it's a Fields or a Lance, like when you look at, there's so many options the Falcons have. It's to be in that position and have that many options, it's a plus. Like you always want to have as many options, especially in a draft that is such an inexact science and it's so hard to get right. But then you also can look at it like they have so many options. Like, what are they going to do? It's overwhelming. Just based on your thoughts, Will, before we get into what you think could happen, what would you do with the 4th pick if you were the Atlanta Falcons, if you're Terry Fontenot making that decision?
I would take a quarterback if it's me. And I've watched all of the quarterbacks in this year's draft, and I don't see a ton of a big gap between Fields and Lance. I would go with Fields personally, just because I do like to have a track record of seeing somebody have success at the college level. I think that's something that people maybe don't care enough about, frankly, and it's the reason why you see Deshaun Watson drop probably further than he should have in the draft. Just give me somebody who's won at the college level, and the game that he put on against Clemson and just the toughness that he showed and everything. I mean, that kind of sold it for me. if you're just going to show me one game, for me to buy in on a player, that was that type of game for me. And so I would go with Fields just because I think the worst place to be in all of professional sports is to be a team without a solid starting quarterback in the NFL. And if you don't have that, you're not really starting from the best possible foundation. The 49ers have a really good roster, and I don't know if they've been able to kind of capitalize on the talent that they have in-house because of the quarterback situation. And I don't want to put all of that on Jimmy G, but I think their understanding and you saw the Rams this year, these are smart football people who are kind of now understanding really to get over the hump and to really become a contender, you do need to have a dynamic option at the quarterback position. And so I think if they're realizing and recognizing that, then that should tell you something, and the Falcons are in a great spot to set themselves up well for the future. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, and I think it's smart. Like you said, you want to be able to look for the future, and I kind of think that's why it's so interesting with what's going on, because I think that just reading the situation, it feels like Terry, the Falcons' new GM, Terry Fontenot, probably has that same mindset because he wants to make his mark on the organization. He wants to bring in his guy while also knowing Matt Ryan is still a good quarterback, which is probably where Arthur Smith's thinking is look what Kyle Shanahan did with him. My system is similar. I can make Matt Ryan back to being an MVP level quarterback. Get me Kyle Pitts. So when you look at a guy like Kyle Pitts, and based off everything you just said about a quarterback, does knowing how good Kyle Pitts can be, not just in the league, but then in a league where you have Julio on one side and Ridley on the other side, does that kind of make you stop for a second and say, geez, can we pass up on this guy? Or is it still, you got to think for the future, you got to take a Fields or a Lance?
Yeah, and I mean, neither guy in this scenario is wrong. It's Terry Fontenot's job to map out for the future. And it is also his job to help you win in the present. He's already got Matt Ryan on the roster. So that's kind of like in hand. But Arthur Smith is right in that Matt Ryan is still a good player and they can build around it. I guess if I'm Arthur Blank, what I'm saying to Arthur Smith is name me a player in this draft who you would take it for that will be a core foundational part of a Super Bowl roster. Mm-hmm. And if you have an answer to that question, then we really start the negotiating. But if there's not an answer to that question, then kind of what are we talking about here? Because quarterback is the most important position on the field. And it is much, much better to have that option in-house where you can evaluate him closely for a year, have him learn under somebody who is still a very good player, and then you evaluate again next offseason, what do you want to do? But having that guy around, even if he doesn't see the field for 2 years, I mean, we're sitting here potentially looking at Matt Ryan finishing his career somewhere else. So even selecting Matt Ryan, you're not getting the full career of Matt Ryan. So that what kind of, if somebody has to sit for 2 seasons, if you still end up getting 13 plus season, like that's worth it. So that's kind of where I'm at is if the Falcons feel so strongly that there is a generational future Hall of Fame type player that they could take at 4 that is ultimately going to be worth more than a potentially even Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, consistent Pro Bowl quarterback. And I'm not saying that, we know that any of these guys are going to be that, but that's what you're hoping to get it for. That's where I would start the conversation. But if the answer to that is, there's not one of those guys, then again, it's kind of like, well, what are we talking about here?
It's fascinating. It's a really great question to ask, and I love that you brought up Arthur Blank because he's going to obviously have a big part of this, even though he said, and I truly trust him because he is an owner that has always stepped back and let the GM and the coach make the decisions, and that's what he said when he went into hiring it. And speaking of Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, they have really done a great job with both of them being a first-time head coach, a first-time GM, they have done a really good job holding their cards close to them. There's nothing coming out about who they're going to pick, what they're going to do. It's still very up in the air, and there's that third option, which is trading back. Now, what are your thoughts on the trading back thing? Because say, like you said, there still is a piece of you that think they could take a Justin Fields. So you said you like Justin Fields a little bit over Trey Lance. Say the 49ers take Justin Fields. Or say they take Mac Jones and Fields and Lance is there at 4. Someone's going to want to come up and get one of them. Do you like the idea of trading back and getting assets, or is it still to the point of, man, you're at 4 and these guys are here for the future. No matter what they're offering, you just got to stay there and take one of these guys?
Well, first off, with a trade, it really is kind of like it does take 2 to tango type of thing. Sometimes, we all sit here and say, of course somebody's going to want to move up to 4, and there will be phone calls, but sometimes, people get cold feet with a deal. Like if you're moving up from the teens to 4, that's the type of decision that will kind of define you as a general manager for the next few years. And sometimes people are just, they'll talk about it, they'll flirt with the idea and then just kind of pull back when it comes time to actually make the decision. So if they don't trade out of 4, that's not even an indication that wasn't what they hoped to do. All it means is that something didn't materialize. That being said, if this was maybe a better defensive draft or just a better for their needs, I think I would be a little more in favor of moving back and then really kind of retooling and revamping the defense. But I think that there's even a chance that a good defensive player is still on the board when they're making their second round pick, because I think a lot of offensive players are going to go in the first round. It's going to push, maybe that top tier, and it's well below what would be a usual top tier for a regular draft. But it's going to push that top tier back in the draft a little bit. And then I think Atlanta could benefit from that the second time around. And I just think that, every once in a while you need to add an elite player to your roster. The Falcons have not been in this situation since 2008, and they understood the importance of adding a game-changing player when they did in 2011, and they had to move all the way up into the top 10 to do that. And just being in a situation to be in the top 5 with a roster that's better than a top 5 kind of record would indicate, I think I'm a little more inclined just to, pick an elite player. Add another elite player to this roster. You're going to make it better. This isn't we need an offensive guard for the 2021 season. I think that this is truly a pick where you're saying, hey, in 10 years, we want this guy to still be around because he's one of the best in the NFL. And I think that's the approach that Terry has said he will take. You fix needs in free agency, and then you just draft talent. And so I think the talent at 4 is going to be objectively better than the talent at 14. And so I think again, if I was in his shoes, I would stand pat and take somebody at 4.
Now, this is a part of this that I think has kind of gone a little bit unnoticed in terms of just a talking point. And let's say they do take a quarterback at number 4, whether it's a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance. I want to look at it from the Matt Ryan perspective. We saw Green Bay take a Jordan Love, and that upped Rodgers' game to a spot where he's the MVP. I mean, he's already Aaron Rodgers, but he played at an even higher level. I do feel like that could do the same thing to Matt Ryan. I think it could put some pressure on him, and I don't see Matt Ryan as a guy who's going to sit there and pout. I think he will welcome the competition, and I think he'll open it with open arms. Obviously, he'll be salty. He's a competitive guy. He's an NFL quarterback. There's no doubt about that, but I don't see it being a problem in the locker room, and if anything, I do see Matt Ryan still having a very big year this year. What are your thoughts on just, you've written about Matt Ryan, you've reported about Matt Ryan, you've talked to him. What are your thoughts of just how Matt Ryan could react to the situation if the Falcons do take a quarterback at 4?
Yeah, I mean, this is where kind of the whole, the NFL is a business side of things kicks in. It sucks because Matt Ryan's been every single thing that the Falcons could have ever hoped for best case scenario in 2008. And he is absolutely competitive. But the thing that kind of separates him and Aaron Rodgers is we will never know if this truly does kind of make him drive to the next level. That's not his personality. You know, it will internally motivate him. But he will show up to work every single day, greet, you know, whoever when he walks in the door, say hello to you in the hallway. You know, he's just the consummate professional in everything that he does. And it's almost, you know, I feel like almost bad to say that it would motivate him more, because I think that his motivation level is already at the top of the charts. You know, just having seen him at training camp off on the side, you know, running on the second field when the third team offense is in, and just doing kind of suicides back and forth and just conditioning. And he's definitely always been a lead by example type of guy. You know, he shows up, at the press conferences after a tough loss, he answers the questions, you know, he does it in a really professional manner. So like, it won't be a public deal however this impacts him. And I think that it won't affect the locker room. I think he'll understand. I mean, Matt's an extremely smart guy. He gets it. He understands. He may disagree and say, I can play for 6 more years and play at a high level. That was a dumb pick by you guys. But he will also then back that up and come out and make them want to keep him around. And in the building, I think he'll do nothing but try to help whoever, if they do draft a quarterback, help them, you know, make it in the NFL. Because, you know, he understands that was a luxury he never had. He came into a really tough situation and was thrown out there from the jump. So, you know, I think he would probably understand the importance of passing along those experiences that he earned with somebody who may not have to step foot on the field for a little bit.
That's a great perspective. I love that. Will McFadden here, joining us on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Appreciate you taking some time to do this, Will. I want to back up here and talk about the Jets real quick. It's obviously, everyone says it's pretty much written in there. They're taking Zach Wilson. You said you studied all of these guys. Do you think that the Jets are jumping the gun a little bit by making Zach Wilson their guy right away? Should they be looking deeper into Justin Fields, or do you think Zach Wilson's the second best quarterback in this class?
I mean, I'm certain that they have done the research on all of these guys, and you know, then you do research 2 years out. I mean, there are already prospects or scouts that are looking at prospects for the 2023 draft, and it would be interesting to see where they had Zach Wilson before this season, kind of in their quarterback rankings, and maybe they had him highly, and then it was a situation where their hunch kind of turned out to be true with the way Zach Wilson played this past year. It may not have been, and he may have just been, this may be the subject of hype and people just kind of talking about Zach Wilson and them getting excited and want to take it. I think Zach Wilson will be a very interesting player to watch in the NFL, because obviously he's being compared to some, you know, Patrick Mahomes, frankly. I mean, like, he's being compared a little bit to like a Tony Romo or somebody like that. But, you know, does he go the way of Mitch Trubisky? Is he more in the middle with Baker Mayfield? Is he up there with Patrick Mahomes? I mean, that'll be really interesting and probably inform a lot about scouting moving forward, because people tend to fixate on the best players in the NFL and the qualities that they have. And other players might have similar qualities, such as Zach Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, the ability to throw the ball from any kind of like arm slot, make off-platform throws, do out-of-schedule plays, and just do things that kind of other people can't. But does that blind you to maybe some of the qualities that they don't share? And maybe Patrick Mahomes has X, Y, and Z, and because everybody's over here looking at what they share in common, maybe somebody's not sitting there looking at Zach Wilson and saying, yeah, but he doesn't have these things that Patrick Mahomes has. And I don't think people are kind of publicly talking about that, but the teams absolutely do that research. So if the Jets do go with Zach Wilson, they will feel very confident that that is the right selection. That's just how teams are, especially when you're picking that high. I mean, you know who's going number one. You've got the pick of anybody else in the draft. So they're going to select the guy that they think will be the guy. But frankly, I mean, I don't know if that's the right pick. And historically, people make the right pick just as frequently as they make the wrong pick when it comes to quarterbacks, even this high in the draft. It is historically still a crapshoot.
Yeah, no doubt. There is no doubt about that. It is an inexact science. One more question. We'll get you out of here on this, Will. I just want to look at the broad picture of the Atlanta Falcons, what they've done this offseason. Hiring GM Terry Fontenot and hiring head coach Arthur Smith. What did you like or dislike about the hires? And just looking at Arthur Smith in particular with his scheme, no matter what they do at 4, and I know it's hard to ask you this because what they do at 4 can change a lot about this team, but looking at the roster and looking at his schemes and Matt Ryan and Julio and Ridley, do you like this team moving? I mean, do you think this team could have a shot to make the playoffs next year? Do you like the Arthur Smith hire? What is your broad look on the Atlanta Falcons heading into the 2021 season?
I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I do think that what Arthur Smith said that I really liked was you fit your scheme around the players that you have on hand, and you play to their strengths. And that's exactly what I've always believed kind of smart football people do, is he sits there and he says, okay, I've got Derrick Henry in Tennessee. I'm going to build an offense centered around him. And they don't have that here in Atlanta. And so I would be very surprised if it looks exactly like it did in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. What they do have in Atlanta is really good wide receivers and a good veteran quarterback. So I would not be shocked if we see an offense that is a little bit more tailored to those strengths. But I think it's an offense in which Matt Ryan will be a little bit more comfortable. And in fact, I was listening to an interview with Thomas Dimitroff the other day, and he kind of alluded to the fact that maybe the offense that they had been running previously the past couple of years was not necessarily the best fit for Matt. Obviously he's been in Dirk Cutter's system previously, but then Kyle Shanahan arrived and they changed their offense completely. And Matt learned he just grew as a player with Kyle and playing in that new scheme. And I think that it turned out that it was a better fit for, his strengths and what he does well. And so I think that you will see better play, certainly offensively. Mm-hmm. If this team is going to really do anything in the 2021 season, I think the defense will have to take a pretty big jump. And I don't know if the players are here yet. Mm-hmm. And they may go kind of what the Panthers did last year and just go like straight defense in starting on day 2 and day 3. And if that's the case, then the season's kind of even more up in the air because you're asking a lot of first-year players to play key roles on your defense. But I would say the range for me is kind of anywhere from 6 to 10 wins, maybe in 2021. So I would probably be shocked if it's near the 6 win range. And it would not surprise me at all if this team is around 7, 8, 9 wins this year, because I do think that there is going to be there's going to be a new regime bump where just you get new coaches in here. It's a new message. It's whatever. And these are still good players. The cupboard is not there. I just don't know if it's stacked enough to really make a strong playoff push this year, but I don't think they're far off at all.
Awesome stuff, Will. Will McFadden, former reporter of the Atlanta Falcons, does a lot of great content. Go check him out at Will McFadden on Twitter. Will, thank you so much for your time, man. We really do appreciate this. I know the listeners are going to be really happy to get all your insight, and I can't wait to see what happens on Thursday, man.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to hop on, and it's definitely going to be exciting.
No doubt. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
That was Will McFadden, former Atlanta Falcons reporter, now does a lot of other great content. Really go and check him out on Twitter. I highly suggest it. He has a lot of great reads, a lot of great content. At Will McFadden on Twitter, big thank you to him. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will react to everything that he had to say in terms of the Falcons, taking a quarterback, the Jets, the 49ers, and then we'll get into much more of our draft talk as we follow along 4 days until the 2021 draft begins. Here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, we'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. This is segment number 4, the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast. So we're going to do this show, and then we'll do our Wednesday show, and then the draft will be on Thursday. So Wednesday, again, we're going to really hone in on the draft. We're going to make our predictions on our top 10. We'll actually give you guys our top 10. We'll give you a mock draft. I'm going to go through some of my best running backs, some of my favorite wide receivers. We're going to actually look more in depth of some of the deeper picks in the draft, some of the names that everyone's not talking about. Thursday will be all about the NFL draft, so stay tuned for that. Because that's going to be a lot of fun. And same with here. Look, what we were just talking about, and this is the one thing that I disagree with Will about. And Will came on, Will McFadden, that was segment number 2. If you're just skipping ahead, go and check that out. You guys will really enjoy that. He did a great job. Follow him on Twitter at Will McFadden. One thing he said was he believes that when the 49ers traded up to number 3, they did that being okay with whichever quarterback fell to them. I disagree. I think that they traded up with number 3 knowing sure as hell which quarterback they wanted. I think they knew exactly the quarterback they wanted, and I think they felt they could go up there to get that guy. I think that they knew Zach Wilson was going to the Jets, or I think that they knew that Zach Wilson, they were going to stick with Sam Darnold. Either way, they knew that they could have gotten Zach Wilson or they couldn't have, but that didn't matter to them. I don't think they traded up to get Zach Wilson. I think they traded up to get one guy, and the guy that they liked the whole time, and I think it's going to be Trey Lance. Look, I know that's crazy to say, and it really might be Mac Jones, and everyone believes it's Mac Jones, and I would not, let me be very clear, I would not be shocked one bit if it's Mac Jones. But I still think it's Trey Lance. I think that Kyle Shanahan has always wanted to implement a running style to his offense. And I think Trey Lance has the highest ceiling in the entire draft. Now, he is the most raw prospect. He's not ready to go. And that's why they're keeping Jimmy G. That's why they said they're going to keep Jimmy G. Because Mac Jones is ready to play right now. Mac Jones can come into the NFL just like Trevor Lawrence and play tomorrow, especially in Kyle Shanahan's friendly scheme. So, if they were to draft Mac Jones, well then they could trade away Jimmy G. And maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe this is all smoke screens and they're trying to drive up the price. It could be. I just believe they really are trying to keep Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, and they're drafting someone for its potential. See, the thing about these scouts and GMs that you have to understand, and coaches, is they fall in love with the P word. They fall in love with the word potential. That word potential is something that they're obsessed with. They fall in love with potential all the time because they feel like they can get in there. If they get a guy with potential, that's all they need, because then these coaches can get in there and they can twirl it around. They can bring that potential out. That's how these coaches truly feel. That's how these scouts and GMs really feel. So that's why I think they look at Trey Lance and say this guy has the most potential. He might be raw. He might not be ready to play. He needs more time. But at the end of the day, he will have the most talent, the most skill set, and the most potential. So if I'm right, and the 49ers really do go up, and they really do get Trey Lance, well, then it becomes, okay, what happens at number 4? And it also brings up the question of what happens to Justin Fields. How far could Justin Fields possibly fall if the Atlanta Falcons didn't take him at number 4? So I believe that the 49ers went up there knowing that they're going to get one guy, whether that's Mac Jones or Trey Lance. I also believe that the Falcons have their eyes on one of the quarterbacks. So say their quarterback is Trey Lance, and the 49ers take him. Well, then the Falcons might end up going the Kyle Pitts route. So these are some of the scenarios that we have to look at. But I fully do believe that the 49ers went up there knowing they're going to get one guy, whether that's Mac Jones, whether that's Trey Lance, or maybe that's Justin Fields. If they do take Mac Jones, then that's going to make teams like Denver very happy. That's going to make teams like New England very happy, because if they take Mac Jones, that means Justin Fields and Trey Lance are still both available at number 4. If the Falcons take a quarterback, well, then you still have one of those left, whether that's for Denver, whether that's for New England, because the Cincinnati doesn't need a quarterback. Dolphins don't need a quarterback. The Panthers, they just got Sam Darnold. They still could take a quarterback, yes, but most likely they're not going to. The Lions, they have Jared Goff. They're still trying to rebuild. So it leaves you to Denver at number 9. Would Denver take the last quarterback? I believe they will. I believe all 5 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance, all will be gone in the top 10. If the San Francisco 49ers do what I think and they take Trey Lance, then I could be wrong and Mac Jones might fall out of the top 10. Because I think the 49ers are the only team that are very enamored with Mac Jones, them and the Patriots. So it could be to the Patriots' liking if the 49ers end up going Trey Lance, like I believe, because then they might get Mac Jones without even having to trade down. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see. And then the other interesting storyline to follow is Kyle Pitts. If the Falcons do not take Kyle Pitts at number 4, how far down does he fall? Would the Cincinnati Bengals take him at 5? Would the Dolphins scoop him up at 6? What a win that would be for the Dolphins. Imagine if the Dolphins traded down, got an extra first-round pick, and still got the best overall prospect in this draft other than Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts. I mean, that would be the GM of the year right there in Chris Grier. That would just be absolutely amazing to see. So those are a couple storylines that I will be following along as the draft goes. I can't wait for Thursday. Reach out to me on your thoughts, your opinions, your questions at GSMC_sports. We'll go through all the headlines. I'm a draft nerd, so if you want to talk about some 7th round prospect, please bring it on. I will look it up and talk with you. I guarantee you I already know it. So that's at GSMC_sports as well as at Kayvon_sports, either way. Now, I want to flip gears here and talk about head coach Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. So, this is interesting. To me, the easy thing to do in life is to pile on, right? Anybody can pile on. This even goes back to school, right? When everybody's making fun of the one kid because, I don't know, kids are so mean. I feel uncomfortable even saying for what reasons, but you know how it happens. The kids are very mean. So they make fun of Johnny because his clothes are dirty or because he talks quote unquote weird. He smells. There's so many reasons why kids are mean today, but it happens. We have all been to school. We all know what we're talking about. We all know what kids make fun of other kids about. So the easy thing to do is to sit there and pile on with the rest of the kids, right? Because that's what everyone else is doing. Well, let me join in. That's the easy choice. The tough thing to do is to stand up and put your arm around that young boy or girl and say, you know what? This is my friend. Back off. That takes some real gumption and real awareness, right? To do that. It also takes, not even so much intelligence. It just takes common sense to know you're doing the right thing there. Well, I am here to put my arm around Nick Sirianni, the new Philadelphia Eagles head coach. Look, it was a rough start for Sirianni when he had his opening press conference. It wasn't quite Adam Gase bad, but his press conference was bad. It was not good. He knew what he was trying to say. He just couldn't get it out. He was nervous. It was his biggest job of his life so far. He was nervous. I get it. All of his words got convoluted. It was all over the place. He's never been in that situation before. I mean, does that make him an unprepared to be a coach? I have no idea. We'll find out once guys actually get there and they actually start playing games. And we hear reports about him being great or hear reports about him being terrible. He just didn't know how to talk on that day. He was nervous. That's okay. And his first press conference, it happens. There's a lot of people that fail at something the first time they do it. I gave him a pass on that. Adam Gase also was a little different because this was his second press conference, his second time being a head coach. He's been through this before, but whatever. That's a different story. So I let him go for that one. I wasn't going to jump all over him. You're not going to judge a guy based off the opening press conference here. And I'm also going to stand up and back him for what happened this week when he had the guts as a first-time head coach in a very tough media market, Philadelphia, to stand up and tell the football world that 4 months before the start of the season, he was not prepared to hand the starting quarterback job to someone who was 1-3 last year, who was 1-3, had a 52% completion percentage, and had an interception rate that was trending toward 3%, which is very high, inordinately high. Okay? That's Jalen Hurts that we're talking about. We know he can run. We know he's an athlete. He had a great college career. And I'm not saying Hurts is going to be a good or a bad QB. I have no idea. I have to see more of him. But the whole point of this convo is, why in the world would Nick Sirianni come out and say, hey, he's my guy, when still 4 months to the season? You never know what happens on draft day. What if a quarterback does fall down to them? You got to keep it open to compete. If someone trades down, you scoot up, you get a quarterback, something wacky happens, it's the draft, and if you anoint him the starter today, well, then you've got to go back and revisit that. And look, and then you have to act like, you were a liar, you can't be trusted. I totally love what he did. People are sitting here coming at Nick Sirianni because he won't admit that Hurts is his starter. Why in the world would he name Hurts his starter at this point? What has Hurts done to be named the starter at this point? So I want you guys to listen to this. This is Nick Sirianni talking about naming a starter at this moment. Give it a listen.
Any starters at this particular time? We've been working with these guys for 2 days, right? We've been working with these guys for 2 days. My biggest thing is competition. It's Again, we've talked a little bit about my core values. It's my second core value. It's this team's second core value. Competition's a huge thing, and we're going to have competition at every position.
I love that. Competition. He was honest. He was trustworthy. You know, he was saying what he meant. By the way, I know we all have short-term memory with everything, social media and all that, but that's exactly what was wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. There was no accountability. There was no competition. It was Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, and as soon as this budding QB controversy came to light, it was all about the lack of competition and not wanting it. So the fact that he understands that immediate history of the Eagles and what happened to derail the whole Carson Wentz era, he's saying the right thing right now as it pertains to competition. I'm 100% on board with what he's saying. He's the new head coach. He doesn't know these guys yet. Yeah, he's watched them on film, but he doesn't know what they can actually do. He doesn't know what they're going to be, if they're going to be good in his system or whatever system he tries to implement. So it'd be irresponsible for him to say, this guy is my starter and we're going to rely on him. Now, if it's Tom Brady, right? If it's, you know, that's a different story. It's you know, obviously Tom Brady is the starter. You would just be lying at that point. But this is Jalen Hurts. He was a second-round pick and played in 4 games last year. And this is no disrespect to Jalen Hurts. Again, he might be an awesome quarterback. And at the end of the day, let's be real. Jalen Hurts probably will be the starter. In all likelihood, he will. But again, why back yourself in a corner for no reason when you get to keep all the options open? And by the way, I will actually, not only will I defend him, I will give him credit for having a pretty large amount of awareness, because this is the complete antithesis of what happened a year ago, as I just stated. So a lot of people are saying, you know, he's wacky, he's weird, he talks different. I get it, okay? He's a little out there. He's excited. It's his first time being a head coach. But just judge him on what he's actually saying, and what he's saying is the right thing. He's not backing himself in a corner. That's what the media wants you to do. The media wants him to get up there and say, Jalen Hurts is our guy, and there's no doubt about it. And then what happens 2 months from now when Jalen Hurts is not good and he has to bring someone else in? Or what happens on Thursday if Justin Fields falls down into their lap at number 12? Probably won't happen, but you never know with these situations. So he's giving himself some cushion. He's sending a message out to his whole team saying, hey, competition is on for everyone. No one's getting passes. We are coming in and we are competing. And you gotta love that. You gotta love that. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. I hope everyone's having an awesome, awesome day. So thank you everyone for listening. We're gonna take a quick break. This is it. This was segment number 4. So we will be back on Wednesday then to wrap everything up on the NFL draft. Thanks so much for listening. If you can, subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitter, social media, all the social media out there. Go and check us out. Check out all of the other podcasts in the network. And once again, this was the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Kayvon Izami. Go and give us a like, a subscribe on social media. Check out all the podcasts. We will be back on Wednesday to wrap up the things, all pre-draft work, before the big night come Thursday. Have a great week. We'll talk to you then.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.